Hi, thanks for being with me today. Hope you're keeping all right, and I hope you can hear me okay. It is extremely windy down here on the beach where I am just outside Christchurch in New Zealand, and it's very, very early in the morning. You might be able to see the sun peeking up over the horizon behind me, but I wanted to be on the beach today because I just wanted to have a conversation with you really about our connectedness with the beauty of God's creation. Some of you may know, if you've been following my videos lately, that I've taken 3 months off work and traveling around the world, been to the UK, some beautiful places where I live around the UK, been to have 5 weeks in Spain and then 5 weeks in Australia, been to Malaysia, and today I come to the end of 2.5 weeks traveling around New Zealand before heading back to Australia for the next leg of the journey. And I have to say that New Zealand is probably the most beautiful place I have ever been. I've travelled a lot around the world. I've travelled to, I think, probably over 40 countries. And I can say without a shadow of doubt, New Zealand is the most beautiful place I have ever been. And I have felt so connected to God here through creation. The mountains have been extraordinary, the lakes, the rainforests, the beaches, the sand dunes, the strength of the ocean, and you know, the animals as well, the possums and the sea lions and the dolphins. It's just been the most extraordinary time I can imagine. So it's a place I felt very connected to God through creation. And what I want to take with me from New Zealand as I go back to Australia now is something about learning about our relationship with God and the world through the creation stories. Now, you may know that there are 2 different creation stories in Genesis. Genesis chapter 1 has one creation story, and Genesis chapter 2 has another creation story. I won't bore you with the details, but they were written hundreds of years apart by very different people for different purposes, and were then intertwined at a much later date. We'll talk about that another day, but they are both very, very different. The story of creation in Genesis 1 is a story that maps the creation of the world out over the 6 days of creation, and then God rests on the 7th day. But in Genesis chapter 2, in the story of creation there's no mention at all of the separate days. And also in the 2 stories, the order of creation is different as well. In Genesis chapter 1, birds are created on the 5th day, animals are created on the 6th day, and male and female together are created on the 6th day. But in the story, the creation story in Genesis chapter 2, man is created first, then the animals, and then woman. But the key difference for me between these these 2 different creation stories that were both written for very different purposes, but the key difference for me as I walk along this beach here after 2.5 weeks in New Zealand is to do with the sort of theology behind them. In Genesis chapter 1, God says to Adam that he is to subdue the earth, that he is to have dominion over it, and to sort of rule over all creation. You know, that's a really important part of what it means to be human in relationship to the world. But in Genesis chapter 2, it's very different. It's a much more tender picture. There's no mention in Genesis chapter 2's creation story of having dominion or of subduing creation. In fact, the very opposite. In Genesis chapter 2, verses 19 to 20, God brings all the animals to Adam, and Adam has fun naming them. Can you imagine the fun that would have been as God paraded all these animals past Adam, and Adam was going, yeah, that one over there, I think I'll call that a platypus. Yep, that one over there. Yep, no, I think that one is an armadillo. Yeah, you know, can you imagine the fun that they would have had naming all the animals. And just to show my age, Bob Dylan wrote a brilliant song, released it in 1979 on the Slow Train Coming album, called Man Gave Names to All the Animals. Check it out, it's a great song, it's really good. Picks up on that idea of fun, but as well as the sort of fun element behind it, it shows, I think, that sort of deep sense of interconnectedness between God, humanity, and creation. I think the Genesis 2 story shows us that this interconnectedness between God, humanity, and the created order is based on tranquility. It's based on trust, it's based on harmony, and there's an element of naive playfulness and mutual respect, I think, underpinning that relationship. That in the Genesis 2 story, humanity delights in the world, delights in the animals, delights in the flora and the fauna. It's a very gentle image of engagement, which is very different from the Genesis 1 image of subduing the earth and dominating it, having dominion over it. So I think that there is a place for the Genesis 1 story, of course there is, and there is a place for humanity to try to subdue the earth and to have dominion over it for its own purposes. Of course that is true. But I think the Genesis 2 story, for me, today feels like a real gift. It feels to me a real gift to remember the playfulness, the beauty, the harmony and the tranquility of our relationship with creation, and gives us, I think, a way to respond to the current environmental crisis. How about if we were to start responding to the current environmental crisis from a position of Genesis 2 rather than Genesis 1? If we just try to subdue the earth, if we just try to have dominion over it, then a lot of good stuff has come out of that, but also a lot of destruction and a lot of arrogance and a lot of pride and selfishness and sinfulness. How about thinking about a response to the environmental crisis that begins with Genesis 2, our interconnectedness, a sort of playful spirit with creation, a delighting in creation rather than trying to subdue it. Genesis chapter 2 gives us a story. It gives us a lived reality of interconnectedness and interdependence between humanity, God, and creation. So as I leave New Zealand in about 5 hours' time, I want to learn from that second creation story. I want to build a sort of personal ecological response based on beauty and tranquility. I want to think about how I can participate in and maybe even help facilitate a return to Eden in all of its simplicity, all of its innocence and all of its playfulness. It's a beautiful world that we've got, isn't it? It's a beautiful world that God has placed us in. New Zealand has reminded me of that. So let's take our responsibility for this world very, very seriously. Let's do what we can to renew our connection with this world, and let's do what we can to renew our connection with the Garden of Eden. Yeah, I hope that's been helpful. Thanks for spending the time with me today. Next time I speak to you, I will be in Melbourne in Australia. So thanks for being with me. Hope you have a really good day, and I look forward to being with you again soon. Take care. Bye.